Welcome back, everybody, to episode 6 of the Kinetic Spine and Sport podcast. I am your host, Dr. Luke, from Kinetic Spine and Sport. Big thank you to the Moondogs. So, we're not wearing these for fun necessarily. It is Halloween week, so this is our dress up. But appreciate them for helping us produce this podcast, use their little studio space, and give us a chance to work on this fun stuff. So shout out to them. And I guess this is the best way that we can do that. I'm not wearing this helmet the whole time. Also shout out to the Habaneros, because they're kind of branched and linked together. And if there was a Habaneros jersey, I would have worn that one. But I just don't have one of those. Episode 6 today is with our buddy Ashton. Ashton is... are you the general manager?
Correct.
Is that correct title?
Mm-hmm.
General manager of Hotworx, which is a, he'll explain it better later, I'm sure, but it's kind of a sauna environment fitness center where people can go in for various types of classes, HIIT classes, cycling, yoga. They also have just a little lifting space in there.
You're hired.
Yeah, man. I do my research.
Yeah.
And he's in charge of this location, and then they're also in the process, can I say it out loud, right, of opening a Rochester location. So he's a busy guy, recently moved, right?
Mm-hmm. Out to Owatonna.
Moved to Owatonna, literally, so that he can split his drive between Rochester and Mankato.
Right
so,
in between the two.
Yeah. But we're going to chat today about, like, what is work like in a kind of a small business environment like that? What's it like opening up new locations? And just what are some of the things that we focus on, I guess. So I'll let you start. Just give us a little backstory. How'd you get to Mankato? Because my story is kind of boring. Born and raised here, left and then came back.
Sure.
But not everybody in Mankato is from Mankato. So.
Sure. Yeah, so born and raised in St. Cloud. I'm not from here.
Go Huskies.
There you go.
I can't say that very often.
Yeah, you big Huskies fan?
That's where I went to college.
Oh, heck yeah. I didn't even know that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I think I saw that. You were like on the swim and dive team or something like that.
Correct.
Because I was going to ask you if you knew a coach that I used to coach with and stuff like that. But
Mm-hmm.
long story short, from St. Cloud, I used to sell cars. It wasn't horrible, but it's hard when you're trying to make logical decisions yourself to try and have somebody make a decision that isn't logical, and it's hard to advocate for that. And
For
so
sure.
I wanted to get into something that I knew was going to be helping people, and so fitness was kind of the route that I wanted to go because I had been in fitness and done fitness for a long time. And so looking around for job opportunities, and found one here in Mankato, and so this is where I ended up, and I've fallen in love. Like, I wouldn't want to go anywhere else. I mean,
Cool.
It's a small town, so everybody seems to know everybody. The vibes are great. Everybody's very helpful and very nice. We've met a lot of really great people, such as Luke in the business area. So it's been absolutely awesome.
Yep. So was this job with Hotworx the thing that brought you down here?
100%. Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
Share a little bit about, just because I've had the chance to meet them a couple times, the owners.
Yeah,
Right?
Brandon
They
and
seem
Vicky.
like super cool people.
Oh yeah, they're the absolute best. Brandon has a bunch of different franchises. He's been a business owner since he was 23, so kind of my age, which was one of the other things that was really enticing, just to be able to learn what I wanted to do from somebody that's been down the path of what I wanted to do. And so super cool people, and they're very helpful. From the very beginning, they were like, we want somebody that's going to take ownership, that's going to make this their thing and really kind of run away with it. And so they've been super supportive, though. So when I say that, I don't mean like they're like, here, you go do this, and we're just going to go hang out and do our own thing. So anything that I need, they've been very supportive. They really took on the role of, we're going to do everything we can to make sure you have everything you need to be able to make this as successful as possible. And so that's kind of the same thing that I've taken on to with my staff and everything like that. And they've been absolutely amazing. Super easy to work with. They're basically like my second pair of parents.
Yeah. Professional parents.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's a good term. Good way to put it.
That's cool. Yeah, I don't know if it's just like one of the books I've been reading lately or just the conversations I've had with people recently, but mentorship has been just a bigger revolving topic. And that was one of the examples when you and I chatted beforehand of like when a mentorship thing lines up really well for someone, there's not a lot of like shortcut cheat codes in life, but like a great mentor is one of them.
100%. Because I mean, you've got so many resources, you've got money, you've got time and stuff like that. And so basically all that it is you're taking the time of somebody else going through the mistakes and everything like that. Because you can pay your time to go and try and like learn the mistakes the hard way and everything like that, or you can learn from somebody that's already gone through it all. So
totally. And
huge.
That's part of why, like, before I moved back to Mankato, I worked at a second clinic for a couple years, kind of with that mentality. Like, I was looking for a mentor, a mentor also has to be willing.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, a lot of people can say, like, oh, yeah, sure, come in and I'll show you the ropes. And then they just toss you into the fire. To me, that's not mentorship. That's just, you may have an opportunity for someone, but that doesn't mean you're going to mentor them. And the last clinic that I was at was for sure like that mentorship setting where it was someone that had been in that space for a while, said all the things, and then when I would have questions, he typically had an example of, oh yeah, I did this when this is what happened, so take that for what it's worth.
100%.
And it just, you don't make as many of those big errors probably as you might have going through that.
Helps really speed up the process of building because they're like, oh, you probably shouldn't do that because this is what happens, that type of thing. So when you say you were at a second clinic, did that mean you were working at two at the same time, or you were just at a different one than your current clinic?
I was at a different one. The clinic that I'm at now, this is the third clinic that I've worked at. The first clinic was up in Brainerd for 2 years, and then I was down in Prior Lake for 2 years. So just two different settings, two different learning environments. And when I got to that second one, that was kind of like my main priority was finding a good fit for that situation. Because I felt like I was ready to learn a whole bunch. Because like those first 1 or 2 years of being a professional, whatever job you're in, those are all just learning on the fly. Learning how to be an adult, like just balancing that. So I felt like those 2 years really helped me like get ready to take another professional step, and it just helped make like that next, I guess, choice way more focused. Where like I was ready for somebody to be hands-on, and I didn't care, necessarily if they were nice about it, not nice about it. Like it could be a tough love situation, but I was ready for someone to like push me down that path. And I think that's part of why it worked really well. Because then even getting here, after being here for a couple years, I'm still making mistakes.
That's inevitable.
Right? Like that is, you learn, like that's just a part of the process when you're doing stuff like this. But it makes it easier to do when you recognize that. And then you also have the past experience with people that have also said, yeah, I've made a whole bunch of mistakes too. It's fine. Just keep working through that.
So what was the like deciding factor that it was time to go and do your own thing, like to start your own clinic?
Yeah, good question. For a lot of chiropractors, and this might be for other healthcare people too, but chiropractors mainly work in the private sector, right? There's not a lot of chiropractors at hospitals or big facilities like that. So their contracts might be a little different, but typically for chiropractors, if you're working as an associate, it's common to sign like a 2-year contract. And so we were getting to the end of my 2-year contract in the cities, and we actually went to, it was probably like a leadership seminar, business building seminar, personal growth, all that fun stuff, right, jumbled in.
Mm-hmm.
And it was towards the end of those 2 years, and it was just like right place, right time. Where at the seminar, they kind of asked us like short-term goals, long-term goals, what resonates with you, what are you doing right now that doesn't resonate with you, and building a lot of just like clarity for what you're looking for. And my boss and I at the time, he's also my uncle, so I can throw that out there too, which just added its own dynamic. But
Mm-hmm.
him and I kind of worked through the seminar stuff together, and then afterwards I think we like went out for a beer, and he just kind of said like, "What are you thinking? Like, what is this kind of stirred up in your thought process?" And I found myself working through that stuff, thinking, "Yep, this is a really good learning environment for me, but this is not like the space for me to like expand and go, to like launch and do my own thing."
Mm-hmm.
And it was really kind of through that process and him and I talking about it that like triggered that next step of, okay, if I'm not going to be here moving forward, because he was kind of in a time where he was thinking about transitioning out of the clinic, finding a potential transition person,
Sure.
so that he could step away, and it just really kind of hit me in that environment that like I don't think I'm that person. And as cool as that would be, being able to say like, yep, I'm transitioning into my uncle's clinic, he's ran it for 25 years,
Mm-hmm.
lots of success with a whole bunch of different stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It just wasn't me.
Sure.
And sometimes you have to be asked the,
Mm-hmm.
like, what's the you question?
Yeah.
What are you trying to do?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that started this really fast chain of events that like within 2 weeks I was talking to the owner of Kinetic Spine and Sport, who I'd never met before, even growing up in Mankato. And then like a week after that we were talking to the bank, and then a week after that we were applying for applications, and then they're like, yeah, you're moving back to Mankato. And I was like, whoa, okay.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So, but that also ties into the mentorship stuff,
Mm-hmm.
where to me a good mentor is gonna help you grow and expand in your own skills and experience,
Mm-hmm.
but they're also not gonna hold you to their path,
Yeah.
right? Because it's convenient for them.
Right.
They kind of do the whole mama bird thing of like, they gotta let you go, and if you come back, cool,
Mm-hmm.
but it's still gotta be for you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my tangent back to Mankato.
No, definitely. Where we spend as like operators and everything like that, we spend all this time trying to like build a great team and get all these really great individuals to come and work with you. And a lot of the times the side effect of that is you got great individuals that now are going to go and do big things in the world. And so if you want to be a great leader, the only thing you can do is advocate for them and try to help them out with every possible thing that you can, and understand that you will find other people when it's needed, but you got to keep their best interests in mind. And so it can be tough when they decide to grow, but that's the game, I guess. So.
Yeah, totally. That's the double-edged sword of like being in that space.
Mm-hmm.
And just before you got here today, we actually finished our like monthly team building meeting that we
Mm-hmm.
work with a outside business person.
Sure.
And that's one of the things that we talk about is like, one of our biggest goals in our clinic space is just to be a space where people can like grow and develop,
Mm-hmm.
develop skills, confidence, interests in things. And when you're really good at that, you find that people are just inherently going to leave because that space might not be the space for them. But when you create that, this is going to, I guess, get into our culture thing, right?
Yeah.
It's like when you create that culture,
Mm-hmm.
and people know that about you and your business, then you're going to find other people that also want to be in a space like that to grow, be
Mm-hmm.
challenged. And so you have to be like equally excited about bringing new people in
Mm-hmm.
as you are excited about seeing your previous people leave and go on to their next big thing.
100%.
So
Yeah, that culture is huge. I mean, that's, I feel like, what sets any business aside, especially in our industry, because we're in the health and fitness industry at Hotworx. So it's like people don't quit relationships, they quit memberships. And so when you build that culture of not only your staff, but also the members that come in and see you every day, this culture of like trying to crush goals and work together to become better versions of ourselves and stuff like that, that's when you're going to have a really impactful studio or gym or whatever it may be. And so that's something that we really try to cultivate, is making sure that all of our staff are not only friends and like acquaintances with the members, but they're also there to help monitor like clean the place and all of that other stuff. But the most important is always going to be building those relationships with the members and trying to make everybody better.
How do you guys like tap into the feedback for that, right? Because I think that's one of the things where we can say, okay, we want to build this relationship, but it's not like everybody walks through the door and says, I love my relationship here. You know what I mean?
100%.
So like, how do you guys get enough of that feedback to help make sure that you're still on the right path with that stuff?
100%, yeah. So there's a bunch of different avenues that we go to make sure that our members are happy and that they're actually enjoying or actually like getting something from the relationship. So we have like a lot of Warrior of the Week we'll do every single week, and one of our main questions with that is we always ask what their favorite thing about Hotworx is. And we make it a goal of ours to have at least one person every other week to say something about how they love the staff or how they love their time here. All of our staff, if people come in and start working out, all of our staff actually is required to go and work out with the members and like get to know people, because we want to be the bridge too, because a lot of members, like, we grew really fast, and so a lot of members don't know who each other are, so we want to be that bridge between people of like, hey, this is like, they know Maddie, one of my staff members, and another person knows Maddie, so now we're going to introduce these two people together.
Sure.
And so that way we're always trying to get everybody on the same page, if that makes sense. Because we want to make sure that everybody's happy, everybody's enjoying their time there, and everybody's growing as individuals. So
yeah, I think that's one of my personal hobbies that probably drives people crazy, is I love mixing and matching like friend groups. And I've notoriously been a person that's like, hey, like let's do this event or make this event or go to it, and then like I'll just pull from my different groups of people, and like I just love seeing people mix like that. But then when people start talking, they're like, hey, how'd you get here? It's like, oh, I know Luke from this. It's like, oh, hey, how'd you get here? Oh, I know Luke from this. And then people are like, what, everybody here just knows who Luke is? I was like, that's my master plan. Just get all my people in one space. But it adds, the way that I think about it is it adds layers to the relationship, right? Which just builds into their experience. And that's, it's like having more accountability people. It's being around other people that are also motivated. Other people that also, you know, if you go to a gym, then you're also showing, hey, I prioritize my health. Don't even have to go every day, but like you have to go enough to where you're proving that it matters, and that's already a connecting piece for people. And I always think about that, like when I go to a gym or whatever gym I'm at, I felt like the immature Luke, like the chiropractor side, would be like, oh, well, they're probably not lifting correct, or like, oh, why would you do that, or blah blah blah. And then I've just learned over time, like, who cares? Like, these people are in a gym, probably just like working to get better. And when I take like that 10,000 foot view at like the world and our country and all that stuff, it's like, I think we would just be in a better place if everybody just went to a gym, whether they lifted correctly or not. Like, so I've learned to be way less judgy and way more just encouraging. Like, if you got a thing that you like, awesome. Go for it. It's going to be a net positive.
Definitely. See, my big thing is, just to take it one like further step back, is I like to incentivize action. And so when people are taking an action towards whatever, that's 10 times better than inaction. And whatever whatever realm it's in. I mean, if it's fitness, if it's just a hobby that you have, if you're actually physically taking an action or doing something within that, you're 10 steps ahead of other people. Because I know myself, at least, I can't speak for everybody, but when I was coming out of high school, didn't really know what I wanted to do or where I wanted to go, I sat here and I have this problem of like, I'll look at everything and I'll be like, I could do that and I could probably make it work. I could do that and I could probably make it work. And I try to figure out what's the most optimal. And I'm like, once I know what's the most optimal, I'm going to start and I'm going to crush it. But at the end of the day, if I would have just like done something, by the time I picked something when I was looking at everything else, I would have been 10 times better at that one thing just from doing the action for however long. And so that kind of goes into like our inputs outputs is where like if you're doing the thing, even if you suck at it at the very beginning, as long as you're doing it, you will inherently just get better over time. And so the fact that you even like step into the building is huge. I don't know if you see some of our posts, but a lot of the times one of my favorite quotes that I put with all of our members and stuff like that, whenever they say they didn't want to show up, I'll always put on there that the heaviest weight at any gym is always the front door. Because just coming in and showing up, you're ahead of 80% of people.
Right.
And so that's huge.
Yep. And I always think of it, you know, retroactively. Like, very few people go to the gym and make it there and then regret it. So I always think of it on the other side too. It's like, well, if you know your future self is going to thank you for doing this thing, even if you don't want to do it, like, you're acting for them. Like, you're voting for that person, right? So even if it's terrible now, you can just pretend like, okay, I already did my workout. How do I feel? Oh, I feel great. Cool. Steal that feeling and then go.
100%.
Right? Like, we're so weird psychologically as humans, right? But you can use that to your advantage and like manipulate your own thoughts. And just be like, I know that I'm gonna like this later, so I'm just gonna like suck it up and do it.
Heck yeah.
Right now.
I use delusion too. It's because I'm competitive, and so like I'll always tell myself like if I don't want to go, I'll always be like, I'm just gonna go and do like one set. Like I'm just gonna do something so that I at least showed up. I'll go walk on the treadmill for 5 minutes, and then I get there. I'm like, you're already here. You've walked for a little bit. You might as well do at least half of your workout, and then it just builds, and then I'm done. So it's like you did it. Okay, good job. So it's basically just using delusion to get me there, but it works. So.
Yeah, and it's so much about like that first step, and we see that a lot on like the clinical side, where there's a lot of people that just like either we get complacent with how we feel, or we think like, well, if I have pain in this spot, like whatever, I'm just gonna like deal with it or live with it for forever. Or they just get anxious about getting it taken care of. You know, I've had plenty of people that something's been hurting for months, and then they finally come in and I go through my assessment, and you know, it's probably a pretty straightforward situation where I can give them some treatment and give them some exercises or stretches, and then just kind of coach them on how to make things better. And a lot of times they're like, oh my gosh, like that's it? Like, yeah, that's it. And they're like, and a lot of people say like, it was just so hard for me to get here because I was so unsure or so afraid.
Fear's huge.
I
always tell people fears. Well, I didn't make this up, but you watch Alex Hormozy, you know them, so I got it.
I knew that name was gonna pop up when we were
at
talking
some
today.
point. I love that stuff. But Layla says that fear is a mile wide, but it's an inch deep. So it looks like this huge lake, but it's really just a big puddle.
Right.
And so that's huge. I mean, that's why taking action is huge, because if you just take that first step and realize that it's only an inch deep, you can walk right through it. And so I absolutely love that, because it is huge. I mean, just the people get so far in their head about situations and stuff like that that they don't live half of their life because they're worried about something that hasn't even happened yet. And so it stops them from ever doing it and experiencing it and becoming what they could be. So.
Right. And like we don't see the cost of inaction until we're down the road, and then we look back and think like, oh man, I could have been doing all of this stuff. It's another one of those like perspectives where and I just read this in my book the other day, but it was like people people at the end of their life often don't think about, oh, I wish I didn't do this.
Mm-hmm.
It was
Mm-hmm.
usually more of, I wish I would have done this.
Yes.
You know, people regret more the inaction that they take than they do like taking the wrong action at a certain point in time. Mm-hmm. And I think that always helps me kind of have that mindset of being like action forward when in doubt, because I'm also a huge thinker. Like every personality test, every professional category test, like with the person that we're working with, Chris Langworthy, who's going to be on the podcast in a couple episodes.
Sure.
But I think she's had me take like 3 different ones to like categorize you as a leader, as a worker. And it always comes back to like overly analytical, high thinker, logic based. Yeah. And so I am the typical person that when I'm in that thinking space, like my tires just spin. Yeah. And my ears eventually start to smoke. And I have all these great ideas, but they're just in there, you know. And I found, like, from that perspective, when I do take those steps, like, bam, things, like, happen. And they often go better than you expect. And when you run into a problem, it's also often way less bad than you've like thought yourself into.
Exactly. You realize that you're not going to die, and you just continue to continue to figure it out from there. Definitely. Yeah. I feel that on another level.
Yeah, cool. Tell us a little bit about like some of the members that you guys have that like just found it as a good fit. You know what I mean? So not only like what is a good member for you guys, but like how does a member show up and say like, okay, this place matches me with all of these things. Like that's what I love about this membership.
100%, yeah. So a lot of our members that like absolutely adore it are people that like don't have a lot of time. So if you're busy day, I mean, we have like someone who owns a car dealership around here. We have a bunch of nurses and doctors and that type of stuff. Just people that don't have a lot of time for them on their schedule. With the sessions being 15 and 30 minutes, it gives you the flexibility to come in on a lunch break or pop in real quick before you go home to your 3 kids that need you to cook them dinner and get them to bed, or go to the sports games or whatever it may be, go to a Boondocks game or something. And so it gives them the flexibility to be able to actually go and spend some time on themselves, which not only is that like from a health standpoint amazing, but also from a mental standpoint, it gives them the ability to just decompress and spend some time on them. And so I think that's one of the huge things. Yep. Plus people that I don't ever think that there's like a like get rich quick type of thing or lose a bunch of weight really fast, but they are efficient workouts, which I really like as well. Yeah. And so again, with the 15 and 30 minutes, the 15 minutes is equivalent to running on the treadmill for an hour when it comes to your calorie burn. So if it is something where you're trying to just be quick and efficient, that's one of the main things.
Yeah, heat, I guess explain to people how that works environment-wise, and then we'll kind of get back to that.
For sure, yeah. And I guess that's another thing that I could mention too. It's great for recovery. Sure. So that's why Steve Smith, CEO and creator of Hotworx, he actually was like big on hiking, skiing. He was in football for a while. He went to Ole Miss, I'm pretty sure. He had a really bad knee injury, and he didn't want to stop hiking and skiing and everything like that. But he also, he was really avid, like, exercise person, and so he didn't want to stop, but he didn't want to continue to damage it. And so that's why he looked into creating it, because he knew all of the benefits of infrared, like anti-inflammation, helps with your circulation, and activates and strengthens the recovery process in your body. And so he wanted to incorporate low-impact exercise, which is the isometrics and the HIIT workouts, with the infrared energy, and then throw the heat aspect in there to help with your like your metabolic rate and raising your core temperature and everything like that. And so mix them all together, which is their patented 3D training, is what they call it. There's the 3 different things. And then married them all together to make Hotworx. So
cool. Yeah, when I like went through my rabbit hole of like looking into ultra endurance sports, stuff like that, and listening to a bunch of people that are within that space. One of the things that surprised me that I didn't know, just looking at it from the outside, was like body heat regulation is such a huge portion of that.
Yeah.
And and they talked like that's where a lot of research was getting put with some of these crazy fit athletes, was if they could just keep their body temp down, they have that many more calories to burn like through activity.
Sure. Yep.
So your guys' model is kind of switching it around, where you're saying we're actually going to test your body's ability to regulate heat. We're going to make it work harder.
Yep.
We're going to do it shorter.
Yep.
But you're increasing the test to get a bigger response.
Yeah.
Essentially.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
It's fun to read through all of that stuff, and because he has a book. I don't know if you've ever seen his book, but he goes through like all of the science and everything behind it. It's a great read. It's one of the like requirements to work there. You have to read his book, which is great. I love it.
Sure.
And so you get to actually learn all about it. So
yeah, I accept. I'll put it on the bookshelf.
Heck yeah, I'll get you one.
Perfect. Okay, so from like a timing perspective, it's cool. Talk a little bit about, because I think the other thing that you guys do really well is you have options.
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes for people that are either not flexible or they don't like doing the same thing over and over again, I think that's where the way that you guys have your options is super helpful.
Yeah, so cross-training is huge. Obviously, you want to try and do different things so that you're not just like doing the same motion over and over and over again. So they have the 15-minute HIIT workouts, which are going to be high-intensity interval training. So that's where you're on different pieces of equipment. So you've got like our cycle bikes, which is going to be kind of like a Peloton. You've got our blast bikes, which is like a full-body elliptical, basically.
Yep.
And then you've got our thunder rowers, which are the row machines inside the saunas. And then you also have, I think there's like 13 now, isometric workouts. And so those are going to be some slower paced positions, holds, stretches, strength building exercises, that type of stuff. So we have like core workouts, we've got yoga, we've got Pilates, we have like bar workouts, which are going to be like the ballet, like doing pliés and stuff like that. All kinds of different stuff in there. So depending on what it is you're trying to accomplish that day, so maybe you're on more of like an active recovery, like you're supplementing it in with your exercise routine that you already have. So you want to do some active recovery. We have really good like stretch workout. Maybe you do some yoga to help kind of detox and just relax a little bit. Or we have some strength building ones like our core workout. We have one called bands, which is a lot of upper body resistance training and stuff like that. So it's all really low impact, which is nice. It's not going to be like pounding on your joints, your back, that type of stuff. So it helps keep injury away, which is nice. Yeah, but and then we also have like our free training. We do have free weights out there. So for the people that do really like the functional training, like your dumbbell bench and all of that type of stuff, we have all of the equipment that you would need to be able to supplement both in and get the best of both worlds. So
I spend a lot of time talking to people about cross training, and what's cool is kind of opening up people's eyes, I guess, and mind to like where these other things can really fit a spot that they just need like extra work in. And like two of my best examples of that are runners. Like I have a pretty decent sized group of runners that they've ran 100-mile races. I've had a couple people run some pretty long trail runs.
Sure.
So like they're like maxed out on the running side.
Ultra marathoners and stuff.
Yeah, they're so cool. But what I've learned from the people that have really been successful in that space is when they're able to work in some type of cross training, even if it's like one HIIT workout a week, and it can be body weight stuff. Like you can just YouTube a decent one. But when they're able to work that into their training schedule, they get better at running. They're able to build up their body in a slightly different way that then they can handle running better. And another common group with that are like dancers. So I work with a couple of just like younger dancers from the different dance workshops around.
Sure.
And it's like those people, like, they're super body coordinated, super mobile and flexible, like have great body control. But when you're that flexible, you run the risk of being in positions that your like body can't quite handle super well. And like dance is also a repetitive sport. So it's like if I have someone that's like kicking into the splits over and over and over and over again, and it's stressing out like that area, if they would have a little extra strength, they'd be able to handle it.
Sure.
And so it's always fun to kind of help people mix and match, find like the right inputs, right? Because if you want to get better at running, the answer isn't always run more.
Right.
If you want to get better at, whatever, there may be other things that help you work through something that's a limitation.
Yeah.
And that makes me think, and it's fun that you bring up kind of the bar exercises. When I was in high school, my diving coach wanted me so bad to do ballet in the off season. And, me being a typical high school dude, I was like, I'm not doing ballet.
Yeah.
No way. And I was still playing other sports. So, like, that was kind of the other reason.
Yeah.
But then when I got to college, one of my teammates who had a dance background just had, like, incredible technique, incredible form and body control. And I remember thinking, like, geez, man, like, where did you learn that? And he's like, oh, I was in dance for however many years. I was like, dang it.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's cool to like see a bigger picture with that stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of football programs and stuff that'll require their team to like do ballet and stuff like that. But I also liked that you talked about like in fitness to get better at running. Sometimes you have to work on other aspects of your life, and that's kind of just like building a business too, because a lot of the times, at least how I view it, is we grow to whatever our constraint ends up being, which again, Alex Hormozy thing, but it's been huge because it works. And so you grow until something breaks or something doesn't work, and then you figure out why it didn't work. And then when you fix that so that you can continue to scale, continue to get better and get bigger and everything like that. So, I really do like looking at it from a objective view like that of what's not working or what's causing this not to work or what's constraining the business or constraining me from running further or longer or faster or whatever it may be. And how can I adjust my lifestyle, my fitness routine, my processes for the business, whatever it may be, to accommodate to that so that we can continue to grow.
Yep, totally. It's one of the things that came up in our business meeting today was like the idea of having a self-audit. And I just love the word audit, even though I'm sure people from a business standpoint probably like cringe when they hear that word. But an audit is just a transparent peek at like what are all the things you can see objectively, right? And some things you can measure, other things you can't quite measure, but you can still get an idea of where it's at. And those things can just be so helpful because it just gives you true snapshots of like where certain things are at. And if you have kind of the big picture view, you're going to be able to pick up trends and patterns. And I think that's what really helps people like level up their business or expand or whatever their next step thing is, because they're able to see, okay, we're succeeding in marketing, we're succeeding in our day-to-day operations. However, like for us, like maybe our patients aren't getting better as fast as we want them to, and you realize like, okay, well that's not keeping up with the other things, so how do we dive into that space and get better at it, level it up, and then down the road, like, audit again. And that was one of the things for us, because we also try and get feedback from a lot of people. And one of the things that we kind of heard through various places was like, well, you guys, like, don't market much. And I'm sure a lot of small business owners can relate to that. Like the marketing part is, unless you enjoy it, it's not the fun part, because it's usually expensive if you're not going to do it. If you are going to do it, it's also expensive because it takes up your time. And
arguably more expensive.
Yeah, right. And but in today's day and age, like it can be a very vital portion of how someone directs and grows their business.
Yeah.
And so that's part of, like 2 months ago, we kind of had this conversation with my team, and we just said, okay, let's pick a couple things, like 2 things, because we don't want to give ourselves too many options, right?
Yeah,
but like, let's pick 2 things that we can do to push our marketing, and then afterwards we'll reassess and go from there. And that's why, like, we're in the middle of our social media month where we're posting every single day. We've never done that before.
Yeah.
So that was one of them, and then
Well, sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
Was that as hard as you thought it was going to be, posting every single day?
Probably not.
Yeah,
That's
I hate
one thing
that we noticed too.
Yeah.
Like, it's definitely not as big of a task as we thought it was going to be. But sorry, continue.
No, perfect. Yeah, and like that's a perfect example, right? Of if somebody would have asked me that 3 months ago, I would have thought every day. Like, what?
Right.
I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
But when you present it as a challenge and just think through it backwards of like, okay, how can I just solve this problem? Then we came together really well, and but like we templated a whole month, and it maybe took us a day or 2.
Yep.
Everybody on the team got to look at it, and then kind of got to pick like, okay, I'll be in charge of these ones, you're going to be in charge of these ones, and then we just pieced it together. And it's October 28th, something like that.
I think you're right.
We've missed 1 day, and that's because it's my big video project day that I'm still in the process of working.
Sure.
But it's going to be done before the end of the month.
There you go.
But yeah, now in hindsight, it's like, oh, well, that wasn't that bad. So now we can use that, what we learned, and just like be more active with it and push it forward. Because people kept saying, like, you guys have a good message. People just like don't know about you.
Just gotta share it.
Yeah. And that's also where like this podcast kind of came into it too, because this is more my preference of how I would want to do this. But I also understand that even if social media isn't my preference, it's still a very effective way to do it.
Yeah.
It's like I have to kind of step out of my own ego brain and just say, yep, it's not about me, it's about the business, and we're gonna do that too.
Yeah. But I mean, this will give you content that you can post throughout too, so it's like you can use stuff like this. But yeah, no, definitely. I mean, in my opinion, there's 3 ways that you can grow a business, and that's the acquisition, or like the marketing at the very beginning. You've got sales, so you convert more of those people to become members or whatever it may be, and then retention. So I think those are kind of the 3 buckets that everything falls underneath. Because I mean, your retention is obviously going to be like your customer service, making sure that the members, clients, whatever it may be, have a great experience with you. Acquisition is letting as many people as possible know the message that you have and how you're trying to help them in that thing. And then the sales is just converting them to join whatever it is you have, or whatever service you offer, or whatever it may be. So yeah, those are the kind of the 3 main buckets that we focus on. So whenever we get to kind of like a plateau or a standstill, it's which one of these 3 things isn't working the way that we want it to. And then we kind of know, okay, so if our lead generation is down, okay, then we probably need to post more on social media. We probably need to relook at some of our paid ads. We need to start talking to our members more about bringing in their friends, or how can we incentivize them to bring guests in and people to come work out with them, or whatever it may be. And then you can look at the different kind of aspects of it and see what you need to do to be able to get to that next level or achieve that next goal. Because we always go back to inputs and outputs, but it's like, what inputs can we do to actually get the outputs that we want to accomplish? So how can we make it unreasonable to not achieve that goal?
Yeah, right. And I think what gets tricky for us that fit into like that health space is the fact that like health just isn't a huge priority for so many people,
Oh yeah.
right? Like that's the culture that's the time and space that we're in right now for the time being. And I'm optimistic that that's going to change, because I feel like the people that are in their like teens and early 20s, there's probably more of those people going to the gym than ever.
Yeah.
At least from what I've just observed.
Yeah.
So that makes me super encouraged that hopefully like that, I don't want to say generation, but like that portion of the population continues that trend.
Yeah.
Because like it just makes everything else harder. And I think it's hard to make fitness fun sometimes.
Yeah.
And when I had TJ on last episode, he's the owner of Maverick Fitness.
Sure. Yep.
Does all of his personal training there. And one of the things that we talked about was like, you kind of said like there's no shortcuts to health necessarily.
No.
So like there's no sexy way to get fit super fast.
Yeah.
And also do it in a healthy way.
Yeah.
So we almost have to get past like the idea of quick fix, short route, and like we literally just have to make it fun.
Yeah.
Like if you can make it fun, make it enjoyable, make people feel connected, then that's probably your best bet long-term wise too, instead of trying to play like the short game.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of it comes down to like just giving out knowledge too, because especially with fitness and the age of social media and everything, there's so much stuff out there that just it's not true. Like it just doesn't relate to most people, because most of the time, especially with fitness, like it's very simple, but it's very hard to put into practice. It's kind of like money. Like if you spend less than you make, you're gonna have more money. And with fitness, it's like if you are at a calorie deficit and you move your body once a day, you're probably gonna start losing weight. Like if you eat less, move more, you'll probably lose weight. Or if you want to gain weight, like if you eat more and not move less, but move efficiently and stuff like that. Yeah. You're probably going to start gaining some weight. And so I feel like it is something that's very simple that we just need to like help people take the action and put into practice, if that makes sense.
Totally. It's teaching people to also have like a BS filter to that stuff.
Yeah.
And we talk about that in the clinic all the time. It's probably at least every week, if not multiple times a week, where someone will come in and say like, hey, I saw this on TikTok of a chiropractor video, or I saw this on Instagram. Like, can we do this?
Yeah, me and my Y strap.
yeah, that was one of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like when that's the only understanding that people have. So I guess this kind of goes back to the fear picture, right? Like it's a mile wide but an inch deep. I feel like the information on social media is the same. It is a mile wide. You can get all sorts of information on all sorts of stuff, but when you step into it and like dig into it to figure out what is it based on, so much of it is an inch deep.
Yeah.
And so that's why we prioritize educating in our clinic and like get people to understand what's underneath all the good stuff in terms of understanding your body, understanding your health, understanding how to make a good change when you want to. Because then when they're bombarded by all of this like inch deep information on all the social media, they can more or less stand in it and be like, nope, I have a deeper understanding than that. I can flag that and say, I doubt that, and not waste time, and just move on to something that's good.
Right, or understand at least where the people are coming from, because especially with fitness, you'll see one video or whatever that's like, when you're doing lat pull downs, don't have your elbow, and it's like, it's not necessarily wrong, you're just targeting a different muscle. So it's like, but an unexperienced person looks at that and they're like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this exercise, and then it just becomes intimidating and they don't step foot in there.
Right, yeah. So, it almost brings up more questions than it gives answers, and then people just get buried by questions.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to someone in the clinic, and they were kind of telling me like, well, I follow this person for my lifting stuff, and this is what my coach says, and all that other stuff, and kind of like I said at the beginning, like I still try and be super encouraging and supportive, because like they're working with a health coach, like they've taken so many big steps, but they were getting a little over analytical with like technique and not necessarily understanding that anatomy wise people are very different. So just because Joe Schmo squats with his feet, shoulder width apart, straight forward, and Cindy Lou Who has a wider stance with their toes out a little bit because that fits her hips better.
Yeah.
There is no right or wrong. It's
Right.
just all about finding your thing. And one of the comments I made to that person was like, well, don't forget that like all of this lifting technique stuff is all made up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like there's literally like there's no holy grail that came down from the heavens and said this is how people are supposed to lift. Like yeah, we have a whole bunch of research and a whole bunch of good evidence on stuff, but at the end of the day, like you got to remember that there's always going to be nuances here and there, and we need to not get too stuck in those and miss the big picture.
Yeah. Especially because a lot of that stuff is like more optimal versus less optimal. It's not right or wrong. It's like
Right.
And so a lot of the times it comes down to like, what are you actually gonna do? What are you gonna actually like continue to do? And if there was one thing that I could like say to anybody that's just trying to like have a better business or become better in shape or whatever it may be, is like really just focus on you, which I know kind of sounds selfish, but at the same time it's like when you really take that step back and figure out like, how can I fill my cup? That's when you can start pouring it into other people once you've gotten to the point where like you're good, you've got your situation ready to rock, whatever it may be, but now you can kind of look elsewhere. So it doesn't end up having to be like a selfish thing either, but really just try to focus on figuring yourself out and your routine and whatever is going to work best for you, because that's one thing that I really got stuck with, kind of like I explained. Like I look at everything and I try to figure out what's the most optimal, and I take from this person and this person and this person. I quote Alex Hormozy a lot, but a lot of the times it still comes down to like me, like what am I actually going to do, and knowing myself. And so a lot of the times I feel like people need to just take the action and like do the thing, which again we circle back to a lot, but I feel like that's the most important thing, is really just figure out what works for you, if that makes sense.
Totally. And I think that pouring from an empty cup phrase is something that hit me probably 10 years ago, because how old are you?
24.
24, yeah. I'm 33. So right in that 24, 25 age range, where like that really like clicked in my brain, because I'm a people pleaser to the core, now transitioning into a recovering people pleaser. That's what Tia said. But it really like reshaped how I looked at things, because it used to be like I'll sell the house and like give it away for everybody because they need it. It's like, well, if you find yourself empty though, then like what do you have to give? Right, like you're limiting your impact long term by giving too much too soon. And there should always be a little perspective in the long game. And the way, like, part of how I think about it is, like, could I give up all the money that I have right now? Sure, I probably could. But it's like, if I do that, I'm probably going to take away from the amount of money that I can give 10 years from now as my just success continues to grow. And so you almost have to do the delayed gratification of being a giver to be able to give more down the road. But that means then you have to have like present discipline of when to protect yourself and put up a boundary and say, hey, I've done enough, I've given enough, I need to balance it on my end to make sure that when I show up tomorrow I can do the same thing. And I always try and think like, I want to have as good of a day as I can, but I don't want it to cost me tomorrow. And to me, like, that's my line. Like, I'm gonna go crazy. I'm gonna, bring the energy, be as focused as I can be, little scatterbrained,
Yeah.
right? But like, and I approach like my fitness training the same.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I'm going to go as hard as I can today without sacrificing tomorrow.
Sure.
And then you learn like there are some times where you can sacrifice tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you're training for a marathon, when you run your marathon, like you don't want to be able to run another marathon tomorrow
Yeah,
or else
exactly.
you didn't give enough.
Right.
But it's like learning what is the repeatable thing, because then you can get a routine, then you can get some momentum.
Mm-hmm.
And like I think that's the only way that you get to big things. The
Yeah.
only way that you build a big life, whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
is you got to be able to show up and do it day by day. The
Yeah.
people that get stuck are the ones that just get beat up from day to day, and
Mm-hmm.
they can't progress anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard. Like I've learned like it takes a lot of the right friends. I shouldn't say a lot, but it takes the right friends to be able to point that out.
Yeah.
And I've had probably 3 people in my life, like my best friend, my brother, and one of my other buddies, that have at various times kind of said like, hey, you should kind of check yourself.
Yeah.
You know, because like the path that you're going down doesn't look like it's going to build for you.
Sure.
And as long as we're just letting you know that from our perspective.
Yeah.
And it's saved me a bunch. Like I've made some bigger pivots in life from time to time. Maybe not in like the main thing that you're doing, but just how you do it.
Sure.
And then it slowly starts to like work together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Cool. Well, it's 2:00, and that's our hour, and we want to let our helper get out of here at a decent time.
Yeah.
But thank you, Ashton, for showing up.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being a part of episode 6.
Yeah.
Excited to keep working on things together with you. Excited to see where Rochester takes you.
Yes, sir.
And we'll go from there.
Dealio. Well,
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Awesome. Have a good day.